As I told you, the NABARD was formed on 12 July 1982 by a special act by the Parliament. And NABARD Development Bank it was mandated for providing and regulating credit and other facilities and to promote and develop the agriculture, small scale industries, cottage industries, village industries. Handicrafts was also the responsibility of the NABARD. Rural crafts and allied economic activities in rural areas with a view to promoting integrated rural development. A total integrated rural development was envisaged through NABARD, and by securing the prosperity of rural areas was envisaged, and the matter is connected to the responsibility of NABARD. The mission was to promote sustainable and equitable agriculture, rural development, and participative financial management was also a new idea tossed during this scenario. And non-financial intervention, innovations, technology, and industrial development was also an additional responsibility given to the NABARD. Now, specific focus obviously was on agriculture when NABARD was formed. Now, to help the small but potentially viable farmers, the commercial banks have set up the Farmers Service Society, that is SFDA. Here again, nationalized banks played a very important role, and SFDA were formed for providing farmers the credit facilities, ensuring the supply of inputs and helping them to mark small-scale industry sector to be recognized by government as important productive sector in the economy, which deserves a special financial assistance by the nationalized banks. Keeping this in mind, various facilities and concessions have been made available through NABARD, through SFDAs by the banks, particularly after the obviously nationalization. Coming back to the calendar of the events, in 1983, first batch of Maruti car was rolled out, which was priced just 35,000 rupees per Maruti car. Another disaster took place in 1984, which is called as Bhopal gas tragedy, and it was the world's worst disaster when Union Carbide, there was a leakage on the plant, and more than 10,000 people lost their life, and lakhs of people, they suffered their ailments and all that, and government had to offer the compensation for years together for, we call it as a Bhopal gas victims. And even today, the payment of compensations and ex gratia to those victims is being provided through the nationalized banks operating in that area. Now in 1984, a committee was formed for mechanization in banking industry, the Reserve Bank of India, and the committee was called as IMCR technology. They were suggested to take care of that and to provide the standardized check forms and encoders. Imagine, in 1984, they thought about the standardized forms of the checks and MICR, and the chairman was the then Deputy Governor of Reserve Bank of India, Dr. C. Rangaraju. Again in 1985, significant tax reforms were kicked by the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and VP Singh, VP Singh was that time Finance Minister. Since 1985, the comprehensive crop insurance called CCIS was launched. So this new concept of crop insurance also came into existence during this decade. That is why I am saying this, the 2 decades were the decades of the happening. And subsequently another committee was also formed under the leadership of Rangarajan for thinking of the more and more computerization, more and more mechanization of the banks, and the use of technology and softwares for day-to-day working in the bank branches. As I told you, the crop insurance came into existence. Subsequently, a National Agriculture Insurance Scheme, today we call it as a NAIS, was launched in 1999. For that, I will talk to you in the next videos, because in this video we are trying to limit our placements to the period of 70 to 1991. In 1986, famous demographer Ashish Bose coined the term of Bimaru states. Even today they call it as a Bimaru states. Which were those states? Bimaru states: Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh. Bimaru, they were so backward states, and special emphasis was required to be given by the Nationalized Bank for the development of these states. Then in 1986, S&P BSE index Sensex was launched, and India's first equity index, that is how came into the picture. In 1987, India's first debit card was launched by Citibank, none other than Citibank, and first ATM was installed by SHBC. Since 1987 till today, we can say that the today's statistics tells us that in the entire Indian continent, there are more than 240,000 ATMs operating. So, in 1987, it was first ATM. Today, there are more than 240,000 ATMs and a huge number of POS machines. About that, I will be talking to you in the last video as to how the technology has gone ahead and how private banks are earning by minimal investment in the technology and using the platforms of nationalized banks. About that, I'll come in my later stage videos. In 1988, Securities Exchange Board of India, that is SEBI, was established. Then in the same year, the National Level Housing Bank, NHB what we call it today, was established in 1988. Again in 1988, RBI set up the Committee on Computerization of Banks. How visionary those people. Again, Dr. C. Rangarajan was the head of the committee, and the emphasis was the settlement of operations on computerized basis of clearing houses. What was the suggestion? Bhubaneswar, Guwahati, Jaipur, Patna, Tiruvananthapuram, all this should be covered, and the national clearing or intercity checks at Calcutta, Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai should be decoded, and MICR should be made operational. Today we have got only 4 grids, as we know, but the base was launched in 1988. That is why I am saying that these 2 decades are the decades of happening as far as the performance of national banks is concerned. Now this committee suggested modalities for implementing online banking. The committee submitted its report in 1989, and computerization in banking began in 1990. Began after that in 1993, since the committee was formed in 1988. Within 5 years it was started. Then export finance became one of the important factors during this area only. In its credit plan, policy and credit plan, the RBI has been fixing the credit ceilings from time to time and requiring the commercial banks to observe specific international net non-food trade, CD ratios, and all these things, they came into picture. Slowly the progress started to be seen very attractive. India ranked second worldwide in terms of farm output. Agriculture and allied sector like forestry, logging and fishing accounted for more than 19% of the GDP. Employed workforce in rural and semi-urban areas went up to 60%. You can say overall employment went by 60%. That was the role played by nationalized banks. Again, I am trying to tell you. I am fond of telling again and again about the performance of nationalized banks. The domestic savings, as I told you, grew very effectively, and looking to the safety of deposits in public sector banks, now new FRDI bill has gone and new bill is coming. About that I will be talking to you in my next video. But that time, keeping deposit in public sector bank was considered to be most safe. Today also it is considered to be most safe. So that is how the savings were coming to nationalized banks, and those were channelized and utilized for the area-wise requirement and to remove the regional imbalance also. The nationalized banks have played a great role. As on today, we know because of this basic structure and basic work, India is the second largest in wheat production, rice production, sugar, groundnut oil, and also fisheries. And that is how India has played a big role. Now in 1991, the situation changed a little bit. Balance of payment had a big crisis. Reserves of India were not even enough to spare 1 week of expenditure. At that time, India was required to pledge gold with Bank of London. That was a very crucial time. And in 1991, Narasimha Rao government budget ushered the era of liberation. Subsequently, we all start calling it as LPG. What were the basic issues that time? Corruption in many forms has been a pervasive problem. Everywhere corruption was there. Red tapeism was there. Bureaucracy was a stumbling block. Licensing policies were a problem. And the economic reforms in 1991 tried to cut many of these issues. They tried to cut corruption, they tried to remove license raj, red tapeism, they tried to avoid bureaucracy, they tried to streamline. So that is how I wanted to place all the happenings and initiatives taken by the Government of India, by the managements of nationalized banks under the supervision of RBI. And personally I feel these 2 decades, 70 to 1991, shall be marked as a golden era and a performance played by nationalized banks in the overall development of the economy. Now, at the end of this video, we will try to throw some light on the small data here and there. The number of officers in 1970 were 8,262. By 1991, they went up to 59,752. As I told you, population per branch in 69 was 64,000 population, which came down to 14,000. Then deposits of commercial banks, scheduled commercial bank, which was 4,646, they went up to 1,73,555 in 91. The advances of scheduled commercial bank, which were 3,599, they went up to 1,05,450 crores by 1991. Then the deposits of scheduled commercial bank per branch, there were 56 crores only, they went up to 290 crores in 91. Similarly, advances were 44 crores per branch, they went up to 176 crore per branch. And most interestingly and importantly, as I have been telling in the first video, that the total private sector advances were just 14% of the total credit distributed all over India by the private bank that time in 1969. Now in 1991, the entire scene was changed because of all these parameters and all these initiatives taken by the government. The private sector advances went up to 41% and CD ratio also improved to the level of 70%. Now coming to the nationalized banks and their performance, the deposits of State Bank in 69 were 1,26,500. They went up to 4,56,000, 45,69,503. The loans of SBI were 1,20,084 crores. They went in 1990 to 28,42,263 crores. The position of nationalized banks, excluding SBI, in 1969 their deposits were 2,63,692, which went in 1992 to 1,06,39,208 crores. Similarly, advances of nationalized banks in 69 were 1,83,376, which went up to 62,12,705 in 1991. Imagine the tremendous work, the tremendous performance given by the nationalized banks. And during the same period, the number of employees and the number of branches which went up, it was huge. So on one side expansion was there, on the other side recruitment was there, on the third side trading was there, and IBM was doing very nicely, agricultural banking was doing very nicely, leader bank schemes were operating. And I would like to place before you the comparison. In 1972, the number of accounts having the loan amount sanctioned below 10,000 in 1972 were 39,23,000, and the total outstanding was just 500 crores that time. And in 1990, the number of accounts went to 51 lakhs, more than 50-60% rise in that, and the amount of loans sanctioned to accounts where the loans were below 10,000 went up to 24,147, you imagine. So that is how the small people were offered credit, and similar is the position as far as we compared the loans given during the range of 10,000 to 1 lakh. In 72, the amount outstanding was just 645 crores, which rose to 8,727 crores in 1990. Now, interestingly enough, all these loans below 10,000, then loans between 10,000 to 1 lakh were considered at the rate of interest around 6%. You imagine that time rate of interest of the advances were too high. But for the small people, for these rural people, for these urban poor people, the rate of interest at which the loans were offered to small men were at the rate of just 6%. So that is how. Now at this stage I would like to summarize my placements as far as this era of 1970 to 1991 is concerned, through which I will be coming to the end of the second video in my series of bank nationalization to bank privatization. I will try to cover 1947 to 2020, even the latest position I will try. Now, to summarize what I submitted during this video, we will accept, and lot many initiatives have been taken by the successive governments with the help of public sector banks. Many initiatives were taken. The overall progress was tremendous. Until then, the situation was convincing that the nationalized banks only have helped the nation to grow. Nation to grow in terms of economy, in terms of different areas. You take railways, you take oil, you take power, you take steel, you take telecommunication, you name the sector, and nationalized banks were front runners to help the sector for the overall development. Now, during the end of this period, however, the winds of liberalization, privatization and globalization started flowing all over the world. India could not remain aloof from all these reforms. WTO, World Trade Organization, and such other international institutions started putting conditions on different countries to keep the level playing field uniform for all. There was hardly any option for India to keep ourselves away from these compulsions of WTO to remain in the competition, to ensure that our exports are also at a lower cost and our export also grow, and that is how the development and production takes place, which improves the Indian economy, which will create more jobs and all these things. So we had also to go ahead with the LPG program, and the beginning was done by Nasirullah government, who came into power in 1991. As I told you, Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was earlier the Governor Reserve Bank of India, he was invited and he was made finance minister, who subsequently became Prime Minister of India, and he remained there for more than 10 years as the Prime Minister of India. About that we will be talking in my next videos. About this and further changes and some frictions during the period from 1991 to 2005. My next video, the video number 3 in the series of bank nationalization to bank privatization. I am coming to the end of the second video, in which I have covered 1970 to 1991. And in the next video, I will try to place before you what has happened, what were the initiatives, what were the friction points, how the autonomy came into picture, how the role to be played by a nationalized bank came with new definitions and new initiatives. About that I will be telling you in my third video of the series, in which I will be covering the period from 1991 to 2005. So to conclude this video, I would like to say, in first video we studied 47 to 70. In this video we studied 70 to 91, and again I would like to emphasize that the role played by nationalized banks in overall development is unforgettable, is unparalleled, and that is how the nationalized banks and those banksmen need to be appreciated at all the times, and we cannot forget the contribution of nationalized banks in development of jobs and employments and rural credit and productions and exports and all these things. So with this I would like to stop here. I would like to conclude this video, in which I presented the 2 decades of 1970 to 1991. I conclude here, and I request you to watch this video, and I request you to await for my next video, video number 3 in my series, Bank Nationalization to Bank Privatization. In the third video, as I told you, I will try to cover the period from 1991 to 2005, maybe 2006 also, 15 years period I will try to cover. And in the last video, as I told you, I will cover the area from 2005 or 2006 to 2020, in which I will be placing more and more angles, and how the technology took place, how the disruptions took place, and what were the challenges faced by the nationalized banks. And even then, the performance of nationalized banks has been outstanding during those periods also. And as I told you in the last video, I will try to place before you which could be the 10 to 15 most serious disruptions which will change the entire banking scenario of India, and what will happen to the job market, what will be happen to the jobs in nationalized banks. About that I will be talking in one more video. So with this, I take your leave. Again, I request you to view my next video, which I will be pushing in a short while from now, and I am planning to cover all these videos during the period of one fortnight, because I am pushing these videos to commemorate the 51st anniversary of the bank nationalization, and that is the occasion on which I am trying to push all these videos. And I hope you will appreciate the research done by me, the work done by me, the points correlated by me, and I try to present before you the whole picture to the best of my capacity. With this, I come to the end of this video. I thank you all for viewing this. I thank you again, and I shall see you in the next video, video number 3. Till then, goodbye. Thank you.